Hi, my name is Ian Michael Wright. My student ID is 807-08-576. And today I'm talking about Alistair McIntyre's military ethics. More importantly, I'm talking about Chapter 9, Is Patriotism a Virtue? According to Alistair McIntyre, this isn't a simple yes or no question because this question relies primarily on the type of patriotism and the moral framework we're looking into. Right? Patriotism is a loyalty to one's country. We're kind of asking the question of, can it be a moral virtue, or does it conflict with one's moral duties to everyone, like the moral duties we owe to everyone? Patriotism is a really partial idea, right? It is a belief that you favor your country, I favor my country, in the same way that a Mexican national favors theirs, a German national favors theirs, a Chinese national favors theirs. Patriotism is the favoring of one's own country, right? This is a very partial and like singular type of view. However, morality is a more impartial view. Morality says the same rules apply for everyone. What I do that is moral for you as well if you do the same thing. What you do that is immoral is the same thing for me that is also immoral. That would also be immoral, right? So this is kind of the tension that drives the whole chapter, because we are taking this partial patriotism and comparing it and trying to connect it to this impartial, universal morality, right? Throughout this chapter, he treats patriotism like another type of loyalty. The loyalty to one's country in the same way as you have a loyalty to your family, to your friends, to your community. And loyalties aren't always automatically good or bad, but they're morally ambivalent. They depend on a lot of things in order to call them either good or bad. Loyalty only becomes a virtue if it helps us live good, responsible lives. Connecting that with patriotism, right? Patriotism is only a loyalty, it's only a virtue if it helps us to live this good, responsible life in accordance with certain patriotic ideas, right? So the question we kind of have is like, there's a lot of questions about this chapter, but is loyalty good and does it lead to moral excellence, right? The liberal view of this is that morality should be the same. No matter where you are born, no matter what you have grown up through, morality is always the same and it shouldn't change. Patriotism kind of looks suspicious because it privileges people over others, right? Like, in accordance with patriotism, I have more of a desire to help my fellow American national than I would to a Mexican national, for example, in accordance with patriotism, right? The particularist view, however, says our identities are shaped by the communities we grow up in, right? I grow up in America. My ideas and my responsibilities are owed to my community, right? Someone who's I'm gonna keep using Mexico as an example just because it's right next door, it's really close by. But a Mexican national has a responsibility to their own community under this view, right? They have a shared narrative with their community and a shared idea and belief with their community, so the responsibilities they have are to their community, right? Both of these views are very insightful, but they also are conflicting overall. Virtue depends on the practices we partake in, right? The shared narrative of community, the goods and like ideas that the community aims for. I want to be able to strive to a certain level of excellence for my community to help my community achieve good in the same way that a Mexican national would strive for the community to help their community like achieve this good, this common good they are looking at, right? And patriotism becomes virtuous only if the country itself is aiming towards justice and common good, and citizens can criticize it when it fails, right? I love my country. According to patriotism, I love being around my country, but it is patriotism, my patriotism is only virtuous if I can say, hey, I love my country. My country is aiming to do this good thing, is aiming to do this good, proper thing, right? Its actions and its ideas are aiming towards a more just and justful society. And when they mess up at that or when they fail at that, that's when I criticize them, right? And that's when I use kind of a critical analysis to say, hey, this is wrong, this is not okay, this is not good. What do we as a community, me as a patriot, need to do in order to fix this issue and to fix this problem, right? And there's kind of two different types of patriotism when it comes to it, right? There's the blind patriot and the critical patriot, right? The blind patriot will look at their country doing unjust things, very war, oppressive, not morally right things and say, hey, this is my country. I still stand with my country. You want to take from my country, you want to hurt my country. I'm not going to let that happen. A blind patriot is immune to like moral scrutiny because you can't convince the blind patriot that their country, their nationality, what they're standing for is doing anything wrong or anything morally incorrect. They stand with their community. They stand with the people they were grown up around, they were raised with. So whatever you, as a morally correct person, attempt to tell them and attempt to convince them of, they're not going to believe it and they're not going to align with it, right? The critical patriot, however, has a loyalty to responsibility, right? It is that patriot's responsibility to say, hey, I love my country, I love my nation, I love everything around it. If it is doing wrong, I'm going to correct it. Because you are attached to a moral tradition and you are attached to like the traditions of this country. You want to see this country prosper, you want to see this country grow and this country reach certain levels. So as this critical patriot, it is your job to not only healthily criticize your country, say, hey, this is wrong, this is what we need to do, but also have this public ability to reason that, hey, this is why we are wrong, this is why what we are doing is wrong, this is what we need to do in order to properly and logically be at a good part in a good, justifiable way, right? Patriotism, it's not a simple yes or no question because patriotism's moral status depends on the moral health of the society. Yeah, depends on the moral health of the society you're loyal to, right? In your society, you want institutions that are built on the basis of helping pursue justice, helping pursue this moral good, these proper virtues, right? If you don't have this, or if your nation or community lacks it, right, you're going to face a lot of issues because your nation is not aiming towards the common good. Your nation is aiming to either greed or corruption if it lacks the ability to want to do morally correct things and proper things, right? You also want a political culture that encourages public reasoning. If your like nation, country, society is really against like, hey, don't give us your reasoning, don't tell us what's wrong, don't tell us like how to do our job, we're doing it just fine, then that's not a healthy society. And that's not a society that can align with a good, patriotic, moral view. Because if you're not willing to take the criticism to align onto this right path and you're going to oppress it, then you're being corrupt, oppressive, and you're doing these things that go against the idea of a moral virtue that are more or less becoming a vice, right? Furthermore, patriotism kind of reinforces virtue, but like if you have more corruption, suppression, and oppression, like I said before, virtue becomes this type of vice, right? And when it comes to patriotism for military service, this is kind of what we normally see in our life, right? People want to be, hey, I want to join the military because I want to be patriotic. I want to show my country love. But not all acts of military service are patriotic, right? Soldiers aren't morally excused by their loyalty to their country alone, right? You need to be able to justify service, sacrifice, and even risking your life if and only if the political aims are just and open to criticism, right? If you go out there as a soldier and you lay down your life for a command, right? You need to genuinely ask yourself, is the orders I'm being given, are they just? Are they aiming to the common good, right? An example is Alexander the Great, sorry. He was on a goal for acquisition of land. He wanted to conquer land and to take as much of it as possible. Was this the patriotism of his soldiers morally and virtually good? Not necessarily, because they were just blindly following orders. They told them to go into war, they told them to fight for their country. That's what they did, right? Was slaughtering and killing all the people they slaughtered and killed in order to get land morally excused because of their loyalty? No, right? If they see that these orders they're being given are unjust, they need to have that ability to criticize and to refuse these orders. They cannot be taking these orders blindly because their loyalty to their country and to their nation is not solely dependent on the fact that they're loyal to it and that should be morally excused. No, they need to be aiming towards the common good, right? And then like having like strong checks and balances, be able to say, hey, our government is doing good, we're going to keep helping them to do good in the same way that they keep helping us. And the flip side of, hey, our government is doing bad, we need to criticize healthily and talk about what they're doing that is wrong and that is bad, and we need to further close down on it and to kind of fix it and to become better as a society, right? Throughout this entire chapter, Alistair McIntyre doesn't attempt to glorify or demonize patriotism, but try to show how it is morally deep and not emotional, right? You don't join the military because you have such a deep emotional connection, but you have this moral obligation to help your community, to help your nation, to help your country, to do and aim for good and to protect and do what you can as a patriot, right? You want, when it comes down to it, you want your virtue and your virtuous acts to aim at this common good and this justice and to help participate in these shared practices and pursue goods as a community and as patriots, right? So to kind of connect that overall to the common good, as the common good and as justice, we want to aim towards a certain level of proper, good, and right. Right? There's a set of moral laws that are saying, hey, this is right, hey, this is right, hey, this isn't right, right? And we want to, as patriots, be able to align with that and align with that common good, right? As a patriot, you're not just going for, oh, what's the good for my country? What's good for my people? What's good for my family back home? Right? You're developing this loyalty, say, hey, what is the common good? What are we fighting for? What are we engaging and what am I laying my life down in order to sit there and say, hey, this is what we are struggling and working towards, right? When we fought Germany in World War II, for example, we were fighting against communism, we were fighting against dictatorship, we were fighting against all these negative vices that we didn't want to spread around the world to cause such harm to our world, right? The people who gave their life into the army, the military, whatever branch, right? They were doing it for a morally just and virtuous reason. The patriotism that they expressed was virtuous if and only if, in their minds, they were aiming towards this common good. And Alistair McIntyre, throughout this entire chapter, attempts to really dive in and attempts to really express how patriotism isn't simply, yes, it's virtuous. No, it isn't virtuous. Patriotism is based on the type of patriotism you enact in, whether it be blind, which is more of an unvirtuous act, an unvirtuous form of patriotism, or critical, which is a more common good derived patriotism. So justice and willingness to sacrifice is technically in everyone's mind aiming towards the common good. But to make it virtuous and patriotic, you have to be doing it in order to serve the common good, in order to serve the community's common interests and common overall version of justice and like what needs to be done and what does not need to be done. You know, like just dying to die and just dying to lay down your life, that's not noble. That's not, like, patriotism cannot morally justify that action, right? But if you die for your country, die for the common good, and put your life down and risk your life for the common good, then that is something that patriotism can surround and can really acknowledge and say, hey, this is what is a patriotic and virtuous act. So overall, I really enjoyed the reading. I loved the reading. When comparing patriotism to like these virtuous acts, it was very, in my opinion, a little strugglesome because it's certain acts and certain gray areas to where you're like, well, was this done for the common good, or was this done just because A, you wanted to do it, or B, because someone told you to do it, right? Patriotism aligns with the same moral rules and same ethical rules as a lot of other things in our life. Just because we choose to do something for our country doesn't make it a virtuously patriotic thing, right? It's like the blind following the seeing man. A blind man following a seeing man can only go as far as the seeing man will let him, right? The blind man being the blind blind patriots. They're following this nation, they're following this view because this is what they believe to be right, and this is what the seeing man is allowing them to follow down, right? Whereas when it comes to the critical patriots, it's more like a line of seeing men all holding each other accountable and attempting to criticize and build each other towards this common good and common goal. But overall, thank you so much. I do appreciate the reading. I know I did go a little bit over time, but I hope it was insightful. I hope it was worth the time, and I hope it was worth the wait.